Virginia's a big favorite tomorrow. If you wanted an upset, just in terms of the difference between the teams, you know from listening to the show that Jake and I both don't think Virginia is particularly good versus last year's team. They're still nationally seeded. They're still rated like they're pretty good, but you look under the hood and it looks pretty rough versus how they looked last year. And that doesn't mean they have to lose here, but Penn was really, really feisty in last year's tournament, got to the regional final, so has some tournament experience. Now, this team is not as good as last year's team. So this is not like, don't expect to see this as like Oral Roberts. Don't expect to see the same thing. Just difference between the teams. If you wanted like a big price that actually has some chance, a lot of these don't, in my opinion. That's one where the difference between the teams doesn't look like as big as how the market has it, where Virginia is about minus 800 to win the game tomorrow, and Penn about 5 to 1, 6 to 1, depending on where you go. I would expect Virginia to win, just like, is that the right difference between these teams? I don't like Virginia, if you can't tell. I don't like Virginia very much. I think Mississippi State's going to win that region, and I bet on that. So there's like kind of like an upset pick. Just, hey, if you wanted, I see all these games. If there's is there a huge price that actually has a chance, in my opinion? That would be it. And then, I mean, the other one would be to bet against Arkansas if you wanted to, just because this is the style that they like to. They like to play these 2-1, 3-2 games. Now, I don't want to do that tomorrow. Like I'm less in on that probably than most people. Arkansas is hosting the regional. I have them rated so much better than Virginia as a comparison. But like that would be another team where they kind of like to play with their food a little bit, play close games, play low scoring games. So upset wise, that's kind of what I would go with. Just like huge price that I think has the remotest chance of hitting. I don't expect it to hit, but that's kind of not the point. Actual bets, like bets that I am more interested in making. Southern Miss, we talked about a lot yesterday. They're about minus 155, minus 160 against Indiana. I like that price. Would play that up a lot. No, not a lot more, but like to 200, probably something like that. Just for with my numbers. I think Duke is actually still not right. And everyone's been betting them, and everyone's on this now, and they're less than minus 300 against UConn tomorrow, and I think there's a way bigger difference between the teams than that. So we'll see how that goes. I like Louisiana Tech against Kansas State. They open about minus 135, minus 140. That's probably one of the biggest differences I have tomorrow. I like Dallas Baptist, anything under minus 200 against West Virginia. And the last one I have, it was something in that same price range. Oh, if you want a dog, like a really small dog tomorrow, but one that I think it really has a chance to win, UNC Wilmington against Georgia Tech. Tech favored in the game. This is a region in Athens, so not home field advantage, but like not a lot of travel involved for Georgia Tech, obviously, to go to Athens to play the game. But for Wilmington, I guess you could make the same argument. Georgia Tech opened a favorite in the game. Wilmington's like plus 105, plus 110. That would be like a really, really, really small priced upset where I would make that game more flippy, or even Wilmington a really small favorite. So that's another one that stands out. And then last one, and then Jake, we can get one from you, or Seven, or whatever, get a comment from you on the rest of the games, including Arizona Grand Canyon. I like San Diego. The price is not great to win the region. They're in a region with Oregon, Fresno, and then UCSB hosts the region. The price on San Diego to win the region is pretty short. They're like, I think circa, I think they were under 2 to 1 to win the region now. And when I did my work, I was like, oh, I'm going to get a really good price on San Diego. Nope, hasn't happened at all. I will say, like them a lot against Oregon. They opened minus 130. Oregon, one of those teams that's like made the College World Series, they make the World Series of the Super last year, made a deep run last year. I think they were the team that lost to Oral Roberts in the Super. Not as good as last year. Rating down, numbers down, still rated maybe feisty because of what happened last year. San Diego, I think, should be a bigger favorite in this game. So I like them as well. So a lot to chew on there, obviously, but just kind of some rapid fire, Jeremy, just because we've spent, you haven't been on the show, we've spent so much time doing this tournament and have been like waiting for these, like salivating for these markets to open. Finally
now
wanted to kind of unload the clip a little bit there. Yeah.
Well, before you bring Jake in, did you say Dallas Baptist?
I did, yes, as opposed to Dallas Methodist, who's not in the tournament. Yeah, that's right.
Is that akin to me like betting on the New Jersey Institute of Technology in basketball, or like?
They're
they actually pretty good.
They have a great program history. Yeah, they're seeded team a couple times. Have made deep runs before. They're actually viewed by the market the most likely team to get out of this region. They're sort of in a co-favorite status.
Wow.
It's they're in the much fabled Arizona region, which Jake's going to talk about because he likes the other game there. That's Arizona, Grand Canyon, and then West Virginia, Dallas Baptist. Like, what do these four schools have in common? Not a lot.
Well,
Mountains and desert somehow collectively. So Arizona Grand Canyon's the other game. Jake, I'm going to guess that's where you want to go. Anything else you like that you really want to kind of get out there tomorrow, aside from, I'm guessing, Grand Canyon?
I will be betting Grand Canyon. I've already bet Grand Canyon on the money line. Their starter, Grant Richardson, is awesome. I hate Arizona. I can't wait for some of these run lines to open too. Like, whatever it is, it's probably going to be 3.5, 4.5 with teams like Florida State and Georgia. Don't care. Gonna bet it. They should smash in these spots. I will say, Ken, we're going to be mano-a-mano. I kind of like Indiana tomorrow against Southern Miss.
We talked about that.
It's
you were more Indiana in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, Southern Miss is just, their pitcher tomorrow is good, and I like him, but it's just, I don't feel good. The vibes around the Southern Miss team, I don't like them. Every time they get to this tournament, it's just something goes wrong. They flame out. They just don't impress me. I like Indiana's potential for their offense at least, so I'll bank on that. I really, really, really like Louisiana against Texas tomorrow too. That's a pick'em basically. At MGM, at least it's a pick'em. I think Texas is kind of terrible. It's going to be a pitching matchup. It's going to be a pitcher's duel. I think that's a game that ends like 2-1. I give Louisiana the slight edge in that one. But I'm just going to be waiting all night for Friday night for Grand Canyon and Arizona because I think Arizona's just going to get them out. Just get them out of here. I hate them.
Everyone's still saying like, well, eventually the talent of these other pitchers will win out. It's just interesting that like Skubal maybe has been the best pitcher in the AL so far this year, but like Seth Lugo is right there and they're very close and you could have one or the other. Luis Gil of the Yankees could end up being one of those pitchers like pretty soon if he has a lot of starts like last night. So Jeremy, who did you end up going with here? Like one name and you have to call it.
Homer, Corbin Burns. I love the way he's pitching. Again, like I think it's a little bit more wide open up top. I don't know how much I trust Skubal for the rest of the season. He looks downright awesome. He looked great in a lot of starts last year too. But yeah, I went with Corbin Burns here, and I still think that, you know, looking at it, Corbin Burns had a quote this year where he said, I'm not worried about me when I go on the games. The other team should worry about themselves because I'm confident in everything I do. And he just seems like one of those guys. And looking at the numbers, the 70-plus strikeouts, the whip just over 1, the ERA looks great. He's 5-2. So I'll go with Burns.
Jake, I think you were a Skubal guy before the year started. I know he was a popular bet. Alex is writing some of the betting data we get from BetMGM. The like 17% of the bets are on Skubal, and you might be like, well, 17%. I mean, you got to remember, like, there's pitchers that are out for the season that people bet on. There's pitchers that, like, before people knew Garrett Cole wasn't going to start the year, maybe bet on him because he won last year. Like, there's like the money is way spread out in these kind of markets. So yeah, to see a pitcher like that draw that much interest is interesting. I will say, just speaking from experience, and we get these press kind of like press release type stuff from BetMGM, just like, hey, what's everybody betting on, which I think is interesting. Early in the season, man, the award guy that draws the most bets like never seems to win early in the season. Like unless it's like an Acuna, like really obvious guy's already number one at everything kind of a thing. So Betts maybe would be that guy, but otherwise, like, man, we all seem to get it wrong a lot at the start of the year, even if there's a consensus. So, Jake, any thought? So Jeremy went with Corbin Burns, which obviously is like a totally legitimately good answer. He's been one of the best pitchers. He projects probably the best the rest of the season besides Skubal. I think you were a Skubal guy at the start. I'm going to guess that's your guess here. Or are you going with anybody else?
I am a little hesitant to say Skubal because what do we know about pitchers with blister issues? They don't just magically go away. They pop back up a couple times a year. And we've already had one disaster start with Skubal where he had a blister issue and he got absolutely tattooed by the Royals. So I'm a little hesitant to say that. But everything up to this point gives me no reason not to say Skubal. He was awesome in the start immediately following that Royals disaster. In his last start, he was great. So I do think Skubal. To your point, though, Ken, I think Lugo's second most likely to win here. Like, I think Lugo is right there because he's got an incredible ERA. He joined Greg Maddux in a historical career, like, benchmark yesterday. He's been awesome. I think he's second most likely to win right now, but it's still Skubal for me.
Yet another piece of evidence that maybe the Bears are just going to be like everyone's favorite sleeper team this year. Frequently that can be the Hard Knocks team as long as it's kind of presented the right way, as long as it's not Hugh Jackson and the Browns, basically. As long as it's not that, there's going to be some bullishness usually. With the Lions, that was the case. With the Jets, that was the case. With, you go back forever. The Cowboys, the 6 different times that they were on it, that was the case. It's rare that we go through it and be like, well, that team's going to be brutal. It's more like we go through and be like, oh, yeah, like I like that guy, and I like that guy, and I like that. And people were going to do that with the Bears anyway, because it's Caleb and they closed the year a little bit better, and it's like they got all this talent, and like now they're gonna finally figure it out. And I've always kind of been like, I think the coach is a huge loser, and not that he's like a bad person personally, just as a coach, he's a loser. And I think that's what losers are gonna do. They're gonna lose. So we'll see. Maybe they make the playoffs. It's so funny because Nick made this prediction, and I don't think it doesn't have to be that this was like this amazing prediction, but I wasn't as sure as he was, and he was really confident. Even before the draft, he goes like, the Bears are going to be like the sexy team that everyone's going to say is going to make the playoffs this year. Just, they're going to draft Caleb, and they're going to draft other offensive players. We didn't know it was Odunze at the time. And they're going to get Keenan Allen, and the defense, they make the trade for Sweat halfway through last year. Like, they're just going to be this team that people want to believe in and even bet on to make the playoffs. Maybe outside chance they win the division. They're about 3-1, a little bit more than that at MGM to win the North, behind Detroit and Green Bay, who are probably going to win the division. There's just going to be this huge push to like support them. And then you add in now like the last piece of the puzzle, which is, and they're also the Hard Knocks team. Like, is there any question that when we get these like MGM kind of like PR emails just with like what people are betting, is there any question it's like the most bet team to make the playoffs this year, or like the most bet any of these markets, one of the most bet overs in the win total market is the Chicago Bears? Now that doesn't mean the under has to be good or the no has to be good. Like, it just depends on what the price is and what you think it should be. But it's just really funny that we have this team that like clearly everyone is really starting to warm up to, even before they drafted Caleb. And now we just throw into that this additional like piece of kindling on the fire, which is like, oh, you thought the fire was roaring before? Well, now they're the Hard Knocks team. Oh, so now everyone's going to talk about them in the media every day for the entire month of August, and air clips from the show. And what do we think of Caleb Williams? Oh, did you see when he did that last week? It's just like, you know what August is going to be like now. It's going to be Bears season. And look, they can still make the playoffs. They can still go over. None of this is predictive of what's going to happen. But you do know that's the discussion that's going to happen, and that this is very likely going to be kind of like the quote sleeper team that everyone's going to talk themselves like, watch out for the Bears with all that talent. I feel like that's where we're headed with this team with Hard Knocks, the last piece of it.
Yeah, I feel